This is Houston. Say again, please.
Houston, we've had a problem.
Hey there folks, and welcome to this week's Rambling. And not much has been going on in the world of gaming this week. Well, I'm sure there has, but nothing that's interested me anyway. So I had a little think through the week as to what I might want to chinwag about. And I have had a sort of side thought to do this vlog before. And just to talk about rediscovering my PlayStation 2 collection. Well, I say rediscovering, I mean rebuilding, really. I made I've mentioned in a vlog long gone by, or a few, that I made the terrible mistake of actually giving away my PS2 and my games to someone that had kids. And I'd just got the 360, and I'd had it for about a year, and I wasn't as into, well, I was into gaming, but I wasn't as heavily into it as I am now, and I didn't have the sort of passion that I have now so far as the sort of range of everything that I do, and you know, and even to the extent of doing what I'm doing now. So it bugged me pretty much a month after I gave it away. I was like, why did I do that? Because there was games on it that still have never appeared anywhere else, so it's the only place you can play them. And just the memories that went with it, me and my son playing it way back when he must have been around 8, 9, and we were playing it. Well, I'll go through the games in a minute. And so it was all of that kind of just bugged me for years and years. And I went to a retro gaming event with it was Play Expo Blackpool, and when you go to these events, there's all the guys selling all the retro stuff, all the, you know, so you can pick stuff up there. Now at that point I thought this is great, because they were selling sort of PS2s kicking around the place for, you know, £30, £35, that sort of stuff. So I thought, well, I might just pick one up, you know, a second-hand one obviously, and the games were kicking around. So I picked a few things up there. Now, I'll pre-warn people, if you're going to buy a second-hand PlayStation 2, you must make sure there's a way of proving or returning that it works, because I had no way of knowing, other than the thing could power up, as to whether it was going to do what it was meant to do. And when I got it home, in fact, it had been tested with a CD, and that was fine, and it did actually work for music, but the minute you put a game in, it just didn't work. And it wasn't the end of the world, because it was only £30 or £25. It was dead cheap, and you know, it's still a loss of money, but it was a bit of a gamble, and I thought, well, whatever. So if you are going to do that sort of thing, you might want to just check that you can get it back to somewhere, whether you're buying it from the person or they've got a contact card and that sort of thing. As it happens, I didn't do any of that, and I couldn't be bothered with the fuss of it for the sake of the money and what have you. However, I did walk away with a few games at that point as well. So just be wary of that if you are thinking about maybe getting a PS2 and building up your little collection from days gone by, or even if you've never played the PS2 and you see something on this vlog that you think you'd really like. Whether or not I probably won't go digging around for footage of these games for this vlog. I don't think it really benefits to it, but I have all the games laid out here, and I've kind of broken them into two piles of, I mean, let's bear in mind I started from scratch, and this was a couple of years ago. I've had this collection sat there, so I've played a few of the games. I haven't actually spent like a lot of time playing these games again, and also some of these games have now been HD'd, and that's great, and they do look fantastic in HD. And when you look at these versions on the big screen now with the TVs, the flat screens and the HD tellies, they do, you know, they stand up okay, but you can see where the HD is missing without any doubt. You know, if you compare some of these games to the HD versions, and you'll know the ones I'm talking about when I bring them out. So, but I haven't spent any great time. Well, okay, let's start talking about the games, because otherwise I'll just start mentioning the games. Before I actually show you them, I'm going to start talking about them. So the first lump of games that I've got are the ones that I'd give, well, some of the ones I'd given away, there was probably more there, but these were the key ones that kind of I always remembered that I just wanted back and I wanted to have a little collection of. And the other games, the ones on the second set, I probably won't spend as much time talking about the second set of games because they were just ones that I felt like I'd like to play, things that I were linked to things that I love. So we'll get to them at the end and I might just flash through them. It depends how long this vlog goes on for, how much I ramble on about the ones that I loved in the first place. So let's get going, shall we? So the first one, it has to be the game that I've probably spent more time than any other game at that point on. Well, in fact, for a long time after as well. And it was Final Fantasy X. Now, I remember when we were on the run-up to this, and I think me and my son had played Final Fantasy IX, although at that point, I don't think we'd actually finished Final Fantasy IX. In fact, we hadn't finished a Final Fantasy game together. But this was the one that we did complete together. And we must have spent, and bear in mind, I know things have changed now, so, you know, the amount of hours I'm talking about now are nothing in comparison to they were then, but I spent about 79, 80 hours on a playthrough of this. And we played it over and over again as well because we loved the sphere grid in it. The sphere grid was just almost the perfect leveling up tool. It really was. It was so addictive. And it was so good that you could go in any direction with any character. I mean, there was benefits to sticking with what the characters were kind of hinting that they should be, but you could make any character anything. So you could take the warrior and turn them into a magic, or you could... I mean, it was fantastic. I mean, you had to work at it to get them in that direction, but so addictive to do. And it was different from the other Final Fantasies so far as it did aggravate a lot of people that it was very linear in comparison, but I think it benefited from it because I think it brought a whole new audience to Final Fantasy. It hadn't been there before. And it did go... I mean, I remember waiting for it to come out and I was so excited, and I went and bought it on the day. It was like almost queuing up for the damn thing, but there was loads of copies of it. But I remember going to get it, and I bought it on my... I think it was on... I wasn't queuing up for it. That's a bit of a lie, actually. I think I went out. I worked in a shopping centre at the time, in a shop, and there was a shop, but I can't remember what the shop was. It was probably Game or something. And I just walked around there and bought it in my lunch hour. And I remember spending the whole day just wanting to get home and play it. And but yeah, I mean, it was visually just so stunning in comparison to all of the ones that had come before, because Final Fantasy IX was a PS1 game, so there was a massive leap graphically into the PS2, obviously, and it just looked gorgeous, you know, and the people actually looked like people and not sort of cubes sort of stuck together. And I mean, you could tell from Final Fantasy IX kind of went back to this sort of 6 and 7 sort of format where everything was kind of tiny, whereas 8 they kind of tried to do with 8 what they did here with 10 and make them full-size characters and that sort of stuff with a party running around. So I think at that point they thought, now let's go back to the other format for this PS1 version, and then obviously had this in mind, the same sort of concept in mind for Final Fantasy X for the PS2. I mean, it was the soundtrack, the story, the Final Fantasy games have this dark... They always have a dark ending of like, well, that didn't... Where's the Hollywood ending? They just never have them, and they just leave you with all of this mystery. Unfortunately, Final Fantasy X2, which was almost a follow-up to it, I've never played it more than, I think, about an hour and a half, 2 hours. I started playing it, and it was like some kind of weird Japanese kind of pop video, and I was like, what is going on? No idea. And it was almost like they'd used the same locations, the same maps, and just thrown less characters in, and I think it kind of was the search for one of the main characters from this one, and it was... I think my son played it and he said it was alright, but I probably didn't give it enough time, but I just couldn't be bothered with it. But this one, over and over and over again we played that. Absolutely fantastic. It has to be in the collection for PS2s. The other one that was a massive hit with me and my son playing together was Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty. That's right. And I think the only gripe people had with this game was that it wasn't Snake and it was Raiden. And to be honest, at the time, and again, I apologise because I wasn't a massive gamer when the other Metal Gears were out, so I didn't really know much about this at all. So Raiden was kind of the only character I played as, so it didn't really matter to me, and it didn't really matter to my son either because he'd never played them before. And so we took turns playing this, and we got we got a lot of hours out of that as well. Not quite as much as Final Fantasy. And we did find it pretty difficult as well, stealthily wise. But it was just, again, they were at the top of their game for the PS2 as well. I might add that all of these games, I think those two that I just showed you, I actually got at the event. But a lot of the ones that I've got outside of this pile, I actually got on, in fact, as well as inside this pile, I might add, I got on Amazon for, well, if you go on Amazon, you can actually get them for like 50p, 70p. I mean, they're literally that cheap, but there will be like a £2 postage fee on it. So you're going to pay £2.50 a game or £2.90. There was a place called Zovastocks, I think they were called, and I got loads from there. And they were all, I think every single game that I ordered worked apart from one. And I'll get to it later. And it's not, I mean, it's not much of a grumble, is it, if you get a game for £2? I mean, it would be a grumble if you were doing it over and over again, but out of a massive, well, not a massive amount of games, but say out of 10 games I got one that didn't work, it's not the end of the world. So yeah, so that was huge, and obviously since then I've played the next Metal Gear game I think I played. Oh no, we did play. Was it 3 where he's in the jungle? I think it was. So you're back to Snake being in the jungle and all that malarkey. We played that one as well, though I haven't got it for this, but I have got the HD versions of those. So, Metal Gear 4 on the PS3 was probably the next big one that I spent a lot of time on. And I really love it. And again, I got it late in the day because I didn't get a PS3 till quite late on after I had the Xbox 360. And Metal Gear 4 I loved as well. But we got hours and hours out of that. It's uber. So there you are. So, I borrowed from a friend at the time that I had the PS2, a game, and I never ever bought this game for myself, as far as I remember. So it was never in my collection. But when I was putting this collection sort of back together, when I was bringing the band back together, I thought I've got to have it and play it again. And it was Resident Evil Code Veronica X, and I got lost in this. I played there was so many puzzly bits to do, and it was so. I mean, I don't know whether this is rated as a good Resident Evil game or not, but I really, really loved this game. And I spent hours at it, and it was spooky as anything. And it was one of those, I was living with my girlfriend at the time, and normally when I would play it, well, in fact, every time I played this, I think she'd gone to bed because it was pretty spooky and scary. She wasn't really interested. So I would always play it after she'd gone to bed. So I just sat in this sort of dark room playing this game, and it was just like I was scared the living bejesus out of me half the time. But so this was when Resident Evil was at its kind of best, when it was really spooky, and hopefully they get back to that with 7, although I'm not overly keen they've gone with first person instead of third person in 7, but we'll see how it goes. But yeah, fantastic game, and I loved the fact that there was so many puzzle elements in it. You had to go backwards and forwards. There was loads of little areas that were just really fascinating to go through. There was even a submarine in it, and it was really, really cool. A really good game, and I had to add it. I haven't played it again yet, so I'd quite like to get back and play this at some point. With most of the games I've done, I've built this collection up, and I haven't spent much time playing it. I have, however, spent a little bit of time, and this was before the HD came out, or the HD version of it came out. I got Resi 4, which is quite possibly the most popular Resident Evil game purchased, I think, in a purchased sense, because it was the first one that went over-the-shoulder shooter, but it still had that dark, spooky vibe with it as well. So I think this may well be the biggest selling Resident Evil of all time. I could be wrong. Someone could prove me wrong on that. But again, I don't remember spending a lot of time on this myself on the PS2, But my son was older by the time this came out, and I think he'd played it, or he brought it round or something at one point and was showing me it. And at that point, I got into it, and I had a good crack at it. But I've never finished this game. It's a great game, but I've never finished it, and I don't know why. And I'm going to fix that at some point soon. I nearly bought the. I can't remember. I think I nearly bought the HD version and then didn't on the PS3, and it's now out for the PS4. But I'll tell you something. I put this into the PS2. This was a number of months back before I moved, and there was just something about playing on the PS2 again. And it was just really addictive, and it felt really nice, and it just felt right. And it didn't bother me that I wasn't getting trophies, or that I wasn't adding to gamer points, or I wasn't, I didn't care. I started playing the game, and I just got really wrapped up in it. And it just felt right in that console and in that environment. I don't know whether this was just me being me or what, but it just felt like it all kind of belonged together, and it just felt right. So there is kind of a vibe you get playing the older consoles, just from the boot up menu sounds and the controller, the whole feel of it just feels like you playing it as it was then. So it kind of, maybe just a memory flashback thing, I've no idea, but it was really, really nice to play it, and I got totally addicted to it. I say addicted, I mean, it was one night, I thought I'll put it on for 5 minutes, and 3 hours later I was still playing it. So it's a great feeling to be back on that console. I should add, because I completely forgot to finish the story off from the very beginning, that the PlayStation, obviously the two that I'd bought, didn't work. And what I ended up doing, rather than keep going around in that circle, I decided to look for a new one, and I found a new one on, I think I found it on Amazon, but it wasn't Amazon selling it, it was another company, and it was a slim version. It's tiny, it's really, really tiny. And yeah, I got that, and it was brand new, factory sealed, and I think it was about £100, maybe something like that. But I didn't mind. I thought I'll invest in a new one. I do believe that the PS2 was actually quite vulnerable to faults. So it was, although it was a massive selling console, it was never a robust one. So buying a second-hand one can be kind of tricky anyway, because even if you get one that works, it might fail at some point. I think the lasers had all sort of issues after a while. So if you can get a slim one, I think the slim ones were slightly more robust. And obviously with it being new, and I don't use it that often, I'm expecting it to last quite some time. So yeah, so there you are. I'm backtracking slightly, but that's what happened in the end. So I have the slim. The other reason I'm not playing these games is because at the moment I'm not set up to play anything other than the Xbox One and the PS4. But once I get a few more bits for the living room and decide what I'm going to do with the extra consoles, I will. I mean, I might dig it out anyway at some point, but I haven't had an excuse to play them really. But it's really nice knowing the collection's there and the consoles there, that I can just do it sometime, like any decent hoarder. Don't throw it away, I might use it in 25 years' time. Now this was a biggie, action-wise. And I remember playing the opening scene of this game and just being blown away by it. And this series of games has kind of been overtaken by Call of Duty to some extent. But Medal of Honor Frontline was brilliant. It was a really, really brilliant PS2 game for World War II shooter. And it was like, the beginning of the game was like Saving Private Ryan, at the beginning of that film where you're coming in to the beach on the boats, and you just land on the beach, and people are dropping dead beside you, there's bullets flying everywhere, there's sand going everywhere. It was absolutely brilliant. It just blew my mind when I played the opener to that game. And it's kind of like that all the way through it, to be fair, but that opening scene was absolutely fantastic. I played that several times over. It was absolutely fantastic. I mean, there's not a huge amount to say on it. It is what it is, but I think it did set the bar at the time for what an action shooter, a war action shooter could be like, or should be like. And they really broke ground with that, in my opinion. And without any doubt, it was games like that probably helped Call of Duty decide what they wanted to be at the time. And at that, there then became this war between them and the Call of Duty people as to who was making the best games. Call of Duty got very good at it. And I did dabble into a Medal of Honor game maybe a few years back, and I wasn't overly impressed with it, so I don't know. But yes, it's an absolute classic, that. One to have, if you're into that sort of thing. Now then, the next two, well, this one. Now here's the thing, with PS2, movies and TV series and movie games were rife, and they always had rights to everything, and the gameplay in games didn't suffer for it. They always ended up with a decent game. I mean, maybe not always, but all of the ones that I'm going to mention were really, really good fun and fantastic, and had all the original voices and everything. It was brilliant. And for somehow that's got lost in the last couple of console cycles, because anyone wanting to touch a movie in a game just can't be bothered, because it's like they've got to pay too much in the way of rights and don't make enough money. And I don't know what happened there as to why the PS2 was so rife with those sort of games, and yet the newer consoles aren't. I mean, and if they do them, it's usually some subpar studio that just doesn't make great games. They're just average games every time, just about. And if you're going to get an exception to the rule, it will be because they've based it on the cartoon or the comics or something like Batman, where they didn't have to refer to the movies. They just went with Batman of the sort of comic book Batman. And then you've got, well, the one coming up for the PS4, which is Spider-Man, but Sony own the rights to Spider-Man, so therefore they can go and do something completely fresh with Spider-Man without referring to the movies as well. So, there are exceptions, but in the main part, they've all gone, or the decent ones have gone. So, anyway, I ramble on to Matrix. This is Enter the Matrix, which was... you kind of played this game and you loved it. You loved the action and it was great. The music was there. The vibe was there. But you're not Neo. And it was like, why am I not Neo? I want to be Neo and have Trinity running around and, Morpheus. And so it was a fantastic game to play, but it did frustrate you a little bit that you weren't Neo. But you had all the silky moves and all that sort of malarkey. And the action in it was brilliant. It was really the bullet time stuff, and it really blew my mind. It was a really, really, really good fun game to play. And I'm pretty sure I finished it a couple of times over. And eventually, we got The Matrix, The Path of Neo. And you got to be Neo, and it was exactly the same thing. And you know what? I can't actually remember. I'm pretty sure it doesn't follow the story sort of scene for scene, but it's the same. I could be wrong though. Relive the best of the Matrix trilogy, so it links it. Yeah, it puts it all together and gives you the best bits, I think, and then you get to do all the actiony bits with that. But again, I spent loads of time on that when it eventually came out, and it was just nice to be the main character and have all the side characters that you expected in the first one. I don't know why they didn't make that game in the first place. It could be that they knew that they were always going to make two, so they might as well save this one so they get the pull of the customers again. So yeah, it was an absolute must when I was putting it back together again. I absolutely loved that game. And the next two, again, Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. I played the ass off of this game. If there's ever a game I played more than any of the others, it was this. And the next one, because you can probably guess what the next one is. They go hand in hand. The joy of that game was just incredible. It was so addictive, and it was so frustrating at the same time, because the save points were pretty merciless. you used to just die after defeating so many hard things and have to do it all over again. And they did have boss fights at the end of each level and stuff. It was really good though, and it had all the music. It had all they got all the cast in to do voices. Again, how they can't do this anymore is a mystery to me. But they got all the cast in to do all of the voices, not just copy it from the. They didn't just go like Lego. All Lego games do is literally just copy the soundtrack voiceovers, so you can hear the noises in the background of what's going on. And whereas with this, they actually got them in to record the voices. They even got them in to record motion capture for, Aragorn and Legolas and all that. And this year, there wasn't 3 games because the Fellowship of the Ring didn't have enough in it to have a game of its own. So this one has a little bit of the Fellowship in it. and then it moves on to the Two Towers as well. Whereas the next one finishes it all off quite nicely because there was quite a lot going on action wise. So I've sent a few tweets as it happens to EA and such like saying HD these, please HD them and put them on something else so that we can play them again. But it is really nice again to go back onto the PS2. I have played this on the PS2 before I moved, and I got pretty addicted to it again. And it's such good fun. I mean, they're just awesome. And you find it was probably the first game where I felt like I had loads of enemies on screen with me at the same time, and I felt uber when I got moves right. It's one of those where it's kind of combo buttons, so you unlock more combos as you go, and if you nail the combos, you get some really silky finishing moves on the orcs and stuff, and all the key scenes are there. They actually got rights or time to go in to the studio sets and get all what they needed to make the environments and everything for the game as well. I mean, the battle in the tomb, why am I forgetting what it's called, people? In the dwarves' tomb, where they go under, that whole area with the dwarves' tomb and everything, and the troll comes bursting through the door. That's fantastic. That level, again, pretty merciless, but really, really good because they got the environment totally right, because they were allowed to go into the sets and do all of that stuff. So it was really cool. Just there was loads of areas like that in these games. So yeah, so the other one was, of course, Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. And the massive bonus to this one was that it was co-op. So you and somebody else, one could be Aragorn, one could be Legolas, one could be Dwarf, Gimli, one could, So you had all of those fighting side by side with your mates, or in my case, my son or whoever, was just really, really good fun. And that's what kind of lifted this one above the other one slightly, for me. But I think as a game, the Two Towers one's feel was probably better, but I still have a big love for the Two Towers as a movie compared to this one. Not that there was anything better or worse or indifferent about it, it's just that there's so much going on in Return of the King that it was hard to sort of focus on anything. Whereas with the Two Towers, you kind of got this focus on the big battle at the end. And I remember watching the Return of the King, and it just when I knew that there was going to be like hundreds of thousands of orcs in that final battle, I thought this is going to be awesome. But there was so much going on, you could barely take everything in, really. But it's just one of these things. If anything, I think my biggest love probably goes to the opening film, because it kind of captured everything right. Its vibe was just right. It hadn't got too intense on CGI or special effects at that point. It just felt kind of more real, if you follow me. So yeah, so that's the main collection. That's the games that I really wanted to put back together. And on top of that, as I was browsing around Amazon, I just kind of stumbled across other games I like. So I'm going to fly through these just so you can see what I bought. I don't know much about them because there's some of these I haven't played. No, well, actually, this one I did play back in the day. I didn't put it in my main group of games because although it was a great game, and I understand why, Grand Theft Auto games have never been my bag, baby. But I do kind of get a little bit of joy out of them when I do try them out, but I'm just not the sort of person who can spend a lot of time in those worlds. I do, however, remember driving around in cars just listening to the radio because it was just full of 80s tracks, and I just remember driving around a lot and not really doing very much, but it is a really great game and really fun, and it did, again, Grand Theft Auto games have always kind of broken ground when it came to graphics and the content in the world and what you could do and how much versatility they gave you to do in that world rather than just follow a story. So it is a good one to have to the collection, and again, more than anything else, I think I'll probably play it just to get a feel for it again, feel like I'm in Miami Vice a little bit and listen to those 80s tracks. So it was kind of one that I thought I've got to have it and give it a whirl at some point. Spartan Total Warrior, no idea how good that is. I looked at a few of these games I tried to find footage of. I thought, well, it looks quite fun. I'll give that a go. So there wasn't many. I haven't seen many Roman type games for consoles. I think I've said this before when I did a Rise Son of Rome vlog at one point. I think there hasn't been an awful lot. There's been loads of stuff for PC, but there's not been an awful lot of stuff on. I realised that Spartans aren't Roman, but but you know what I mean. Those sort of era of games, just they didn't really appear for console as much as far as I know, but there did seem to be a few for the PS2. Black, I dug around on this, and apparently this got really good reviews, but it says on the box, look, 10 out of 10. So I wanted to give that a whirl. Again, I haven't played it. These are really interesting ones, aren't they? Because I haven't played them, can't say anything about them. And what we got? Shadows of Rome. So there was a Roman one that I picked up. Again, simply because I haven't seen any Roman games for the consoles that came after, so I wanted to give it a whirl. We've got this was recommended to me by somebody on Twitter, a Norwegian friend, and it's called Primal. Supposedly has a really good sort of battle system, well, fun fighting system. So I shall definitely be giving that a go at some point. Now this I have given a go. It was, again, 24 the game, which, I don't know, it probably got average reviews at the time, I've no idea, but it's got every single key character in this game, and it's all the original actors' voices recorded specifically for this game. It's absolutely, I mean, I put it on and I couldn't believe all these people were there. And it actually plays like you watch it on TV, so the screen breaks up into little separate screens. So you've got somebody talking and doing something over there, you've got you driving around doing your thing or running around shooting, and it was really, really good fun. I got really addicted to it for about 3 hours or so when I was playing it. And I'm definitely going to go back and give it a whirl, because it was just like being in an episode of 24 and running around. I think at one point I stopped being Jack Bauer, started being someone else, then went back to Jack Bauer again. So you jump about. But it had all the, it had Tony, it had Michelle, it had Jack, obviously, the president, who I forget the name. It was the black president at that point. And the daughters in it. I mean, I just wish we could have these sorts of things for now and be done by decent companies and have all the actors involved and stuff. Maybe it's the price of the actors. Maybe that's what the problem is. Final Fantasy 12. Now, this was a game that I'd never played. My son had played it, and I don't know why I never got round to it. No idea. I still to this day don't know why Final Fantasy 12 didn't come onto my radar. However, having played it, not a massive fan of the battle system, I have to say, but it is a good game. It's just not. I just can't. I find it hard every time I put this game in. I find it difficult to get addicted to it, because it's almost like free roam. You can move around during battle and stuff. It's not like the turn-based stuff that you expect from Final Fantasy, and I suspect that that's what the new Final Fantasy is like as well. So it's going to be interesting to see if I enjoy that, but. Again, I will give it a good go at some point. But funnily enough, I mean, my son said, for a long, long time, my son said this was the one game that he'd never finished, the one Final Fantasy he never finished. Though I think he might have done it now, but only recently. Because he's been waiting so damn long for Final Fantasy 15, which has been delayed again. And then we have Area 51. I thought, Aliens, why not? Haven't played that one. In fact, these two can go together. Look. Oh, actually, one of these is an Xbox game, an original Xbox game, and I bought it because I thought, oh, way up, this will play on my 360, because the 360 did that. It played old Xbox. It played most Xbox games, original ones. But when you put them in, you kind of cut yourself off from being able to use chat and all that sort of stuff. But they do play, and it was Buffy the Vampire Slayer game, and I realise it's probably not on everyone's list, but it's that at that point it was like the only Buffy game that I knew existed, and again it was all of the right characters voicing the action, and I loved it for that. And it felt like I was just in an episode of Buffy. I played, so I hadn't actually played it until I got it. I'm trying to remember if I bought. I think I got this just before I got the PS2 collection back together. So when I went to get the PS2 collection, I did actually, and I didn't know it existed, find another Buffy the Vampire Slayer game, again with all the cast in it. And, well, it's called Chaos Bleeds, that one. And it's just fantastic. That one's got Spike in it as well. Oh, and Faith. So I've got that to give a go yet, because I'm pretty sure I haven't tried that one. I've only tried the Xbox one. So, yeah, I mean, anyone who knows me knows how much I love Buffy. So it's just my thing. So it was a no-brainer to have those in my collection. And the last three people, we're nearly there. The Thing. And I've played this actually, and it gets really addictive. It's a really addictive game. It captures the vibe of The Thing spot on. It's a really good fun game to play. Doesn't have any of the characters in from the film that I remember. It's just a group of people that arrive to find out what the hell went on, and then obviously find themselves in the same nightmare. So I have tried that, and it was really good fun. I played that actually a few times over a few days, and it was getting really good. I say that I stopped playing these games just because I put the PS2 away at some point and get it back out. And then I discovered there was a PS2 game for Batman Begins, which that may well exist on one of the newer consoles, because it must be quite late in the PS2 life cycle, that I would have thought. And again, I haven't tried it out yet. I was curious to see what the film-related Batman was like, so I just bought it. I haven't tried it yet. And the other one was just a no-brainer, classic Crazy Taxi. And I picked that up at the event I was at as well, because it was just pence. So yeah, I did buy. These games all look like they're in pretty good condition. There was a few that I got from the event which cost me about. There was two that I got for about £20, and that was Final Fantasy and Resident Evil 4, because they were still factory sealed. Which just because I loved those two games, I just thought I'd take the opportunity to get brand new versions. Out of all of those games, only one of them's not worked, and it was the two. I think it was one of the Lord of the Rings ones. I'm pretty sure it was the Two Towers. It just didn't work, so I bought another copy from Amazon, and it was fine. So I've ended up with two copies of that, but one of them doesn't work. But that whole collection has take the two that were £20 out, and you've probably got a collection there. If you're saying there's £2 delivery on each, you've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, probably £30 or something to put that entire collection together. Cost me about £110, £120 for the PS2, maybe something like that. So it wasn't a massive dishing out of money if you want to put a nice little collection together. And bear in mind that PS2 Slim was new, so I'm really glad that I've got the collection back together. I know I'm sitting here saying that I'm not playing them, but once I've got things set up the way I want to have them set up, and once I get back into my gaming a bit more, I've been doing a lot of telly watching. I've been watching The Walking Dead finally, now that it's come on to Now TV, so I've watched about 4 seasons of that in about a week. I've got 2 seasons to go. So, once I get my game face back on at some point, I spend a bit more time in the game world. I'm also doing gym in the evenings, and that's 4 days a week and stuff like that. So I'm back later in the evenings and stuff at night. So it's the weekends really that I'm going to have more time to do this sort of stuff. But it's just nice knowing that collection's there. I can go back, dig out the PS2, just remember old times. If my son comes around, we can do it. It's just something different to do sometimes. And as I say, even though there's HD versions of these games out now, I still feel like there's just something about playing it on the original format. If I had a big enough house, to be honest, I'd probably get a fairly big tube TV so that I can play them on the tube TV, because the HD TVs do... Well, these games aren't all widescreen for a start, so you end up with a square in the middle, and also the screen doesn't quite fit horizontal line-wise. So if you have a tube telly, it'd probably look a little bit better, because it doesn't show off the frailties of non-HD if you've got a tube telly. So if you've got room for that sort of stuff, you might want to get a decent-sized tube TV you can enjoy them on. But it doesn't, it was fine on the big screen. It just, If you want to look for perfection of the way that they should have been played, then you can get a tube telly, you know. But I don't have a spare room. I've only got my bedroom, the living room, the kitchen, and the toilet. I've got to have one of them. I'm not going to put a tube telly in the toilet. So yeah, I mean if you've thought about any form of retro gaming before, then the PS2 is probably a good place to start because, and I know a lot of people don't class the PS2 as retro, but technically it is now because they're not making any more games for it. So if you want to have a back catalogue of older games, it's a good place to go because you can get so many games cheap. Unfortunately, retro collectors have made older things now a very expensive thing to do because if you want to gather a decent back catalogue of anything other than PS2, you're probably going to start dishing out money simply because other people are buying them up and then selling them on to some extent. I mean, that's what these retro fairs do as well. You know, they've bought them for a price and they'll mark them up and they'll sell them on to you. So, but to some, I mean, as I say, I went onto Amazon and got all of these games 50p, £2 package. So you're looking at £2.50 a game. You can't grumble at that. I mean, it's fantastic. So there you are. There has been my rambling for this week. I hope you like that. I had been thinking about doing this for a while. It has gone on quite a long time. I do realise that. A little bit longer than normal. But there's a good collection there. You can maybe let me know what you think of some of those games. Did you have them? Did you think some of them sucked and I thought they were great? Did you think they were all great and I thought they were great? Let me know in the comments below if you really feel like it. It has been an honour and a privilege serving for you again, and I shall see you all next time. Take it easy, guys. Bye.